And we will start. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Preccelerator workshop series. I'm so excited today to introduce you to an old friend of mine who reached out because he's working with a startup and needed some advice and wanted to brainstorm with me. And in the process of doing that, I said, Leonard, are you still doing this sales training that you've always been doing? And he said, yes. And I took this sales workshop, a 3-day workshop with Leonard 20 some odd years ago. It must have been in 2004 or five, somewhere around there. And there's a couple of gems that I learned in his sales workshop that some of you may have heard me say. One of my favorites is, and it speaks to tenacity, be a cockroach and don't give up. Always be there when the lights are on and when the lights are off. And then the other one I love, and I this is probably the best tip I ever got from Leonard: sell to the no. Go for the no. Give people permission and make them feel comfortable about saying no, so you can move on and sell your product to people that want it. And then he'll go into a lot of other great tips today for you. So with that. Not going into any biographical background on Leonard. I'm just going to let him take it away from here. You're on, sir.
Thank you, Len. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to share my screen so you'll get some slides. Hang on one second. Okay. And now we're at full screen. Everybody seeing it full screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I've attempted to make this as robust a seminar, workshop, or webinar as possible. Not knowing you folks in advance, I wasn't sure exactly what all the issues were. So I put a lot of the most common issues that I confront daily with my clients going through startup. And I'm hoping to hit the nail on the head and identify the issues that are relevant to you, maybe even identify why it's happening and some quick solutions that you can implement right away. Everything may not pertain to you, so please be understanding if something doesn't. You know, a minute later, we're going to change topics to something else that will probably be more relevant for you. I also do believe in the saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So just because I say something and I have an opinion or a direction on something, if you're already doing something and it's working well for you, and I don't mean you're tolerating it, but it's really working well for you, stay where you're at. All right. So this topic of working in your business or on your business, I've been asking people this for 30 years. And most people still today look at me like the dog with hearing a weird noise with their head to the side. What does that mean, working in your business or on your business? So I see it as a scale. And for the lawyer who I was just telling to, I did this for the Beverly Hills Bar. It was balancing the scales of work life and home life. So working in your business or on your business. The question I ask people is, what activities do you avoid doing and why? And the most common things I hear are sales and marketing, investor relations, hiring and firing, and networking. Those are the things that I hear people avoiding. Then I say, well, what activities are you doing prematurely or unnecessarily and why? And it's the analysis and R&D and updating the business plan and the making of newsletters and organizing and alphabetizing files. And not that anything's wrong with any of that. But before I show you the number one reason, can anybody guess, and with this, Len, I'm hoping they just shout it out, what is the reason that we don't do the activities that we know we should be doing when we should be doing them? Anybody want to just shout out a word or two?
Fear.
Fear. Ba-boom. The fear of rejection. This has been the biggest issue that I deal with over the last 30 years of my career. Did everybody's mother growing up say, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers? So we were 4, 5, 6, and 7, and our mom, the most influential person in many of our lives, said, don't talk to strangers. And now you're all grown up, and you got Len on one shoulder and me on the other shoulder saying, call strangers, go network, go in the room. And mom's going to win every time. So let's dissect the fear of rejection. And I believe, and I'm going to commit to you, that in the next 2 minutes, I can help many of you get over the fear of rejection. You ready? First, we have to identify what does fear stand for. And I'm big into acronyms because I know that helps me remember things. The first one's a little bit of a joke. Forget everything and run. But in reality, that is what a lot of us do. We forget that we're pouring our lives and souls into this new startup business, but yet we run away to Excel and PowerPoint and doing other things that are never going to get us off the ground. So we're forgetting what we know about business development, and we run into something that we feel safe because, let's face it, has anybody ever been rejected by PowerPoint? Has Excel ever told you, no, that's a stupid idea? No. So we do the things that are comfortable, that have no rejection attached to them. Fear also stands for false evidence appearing real. So I want to ask somebody a question. And if somebody is comfortable coming to the light and answering public with me, I'd like to do that if you're comfortable. If not, don't worry. When we say we have a fear of rejection, so you're thinking about making that call, whether it's for capital or sales or whatever it might be, and this fear comes over and you get this feeling of, oh, I'm not comfortable. What are you afraid of? Can you identify, can you put into words, what is it exactly you're trying to prevent from happening?
Sorry.
Well,
Finding out that this work isn't worth it, that people don't think it's going to make it, that it wasn't worth starting and putting all this energy into, and it's just a big waste of time.
Ooh.
Amen.
So the naysayer that you may encounter does not have the knowledge, the belief, the confidence in your project, and they're affecting your mindset. Is that what I'm hearing? Sorry?
Yes.
Okay, not unusual. So do they win? Because of that potential risk of what if they don't get it and what if they're funny about it or whatever, you don't make the effort, you don't make the call?
Me personally, I think that it depends. I mean, I have a food business.
Okay.
So if I pitch every single grocery market, I pitch every single place that I want my product to retail, and everyone says no, it's a tough pivot.
Okay. The question I would ask, and Len would ask the same question, is your pitch as refined and on their agenda as possible, or are you presenting features and benefits that they don't really care about? Just tell me what's in it for me. I recently had an encounter, and I'm going to keep it generic because I don't know if any of you know this person or this company, but a friend of mine invested in a healthy donut company. Now that's an oxymoron, right? Healthy donut. What makes them healthy? Well, they're a third the size of a regular donut. So think more like a ring ding than a donut. Sorry for the ring ding reference to those of you under age 40. And the ingredients were cleaner, better ingredients. So this donut that's a third the size is $5 a donut. And he brought me a box, and my girlfriend and I sampled them with some friends, and we were testing them. And people said, it doesn't taste good. And if I'm going to eat a donut, I want a donut. I don't want a healthy thing. I want a donut. That's the point of eating a donut. So they've had to rethink their strategy and their positioning and their marketing on who is really their audience. This is not a 7-Eleven play. This is a Whole Foods Erewhon play for very high-end families that want to reduce the sugar and the other stuff, but it's not replacing a donut. So sorry, I don't know your specific situation, but I do want to say something very, very significant for everybody, and I did not make a slide about this. In dealing with rejection, I often give this analogy for people. You've all seen a castle on TV or in person, and around the castle is a moat. And what's in the moat? Sorry, what's the moat got in it? You're on mute, sorry.
Crocodiles, for sure.
Okay, crocodiles. And what are the crocodiles there for?
To eat any intruders.
To protect the inhabitants of the castle, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the owner of the castle has access to the drawbridge, right? We're all familiar with the drawbridge that goes up and down. And when we sense danger, we raise the drawbridge so nobody can get into the castle. Let the crocodiles have them, right? Your attitude about your business, about your product, about your service, your mindset is your castle. And if you let random intruders across the drawbridge into the castle and say, sorry, that's stupid, that's crazy, why would anybody buy that, blah, 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 you're basically allowing the enemy into your castle, and they're going to take over. They're going to win. Now, sometimes they could be right. They may have critique and feedback for you that, oh, I haven't thought about that, right? So don't take it personally. Really evaluate it. But the first, probably the most important thing I could teach all of you these on this call is to guard your mindset and your attitude. If done the research and you believe in what you're doing and you know it's a home run, it just has to happen, don't let some yo-yo off the street screw up your attitude. Keep the drawbridge up until you know they're friendly. Okay, let's continue.
Another one is for those of us of a certain age, the way we're taught was you can have 9 yeses and 1 no, and you'll focus on the no.
Well, the question is, what do you learn from the no? Is the no instructive?
It doesn't matter. The fact of focusing on 1 no versus 9 yeses.
Okay, so that's true, and we're going to get back to that shortly. But when I talk about false evidence appearing real, people normally have a sense of, if I make the call and I screw it up, I'm going to lose something, right? This is something I learned in the mid-90s. You can't lose what you don't have. Folks, I want to encourage you to think right now, and if you're very oriented and you want to write it down, write it down. What's the one call that is the most fearful for you to make right now, whether it's to a potential investor or a hire or whoever it is? What's the most frightening call you have right now that you have not made? Anybody want to let me know? We'll talk this through together.
Hi.
Who's that? Rebecca? Oh. Was somebody responding to the fear and the person they have in mind to call? Okay. I'll do it without you. When I ask people, what are you afraid of calling? What are you afraid of hearing? They say rejection, that they may say no. And I say, okay, so the worst case scenario is they reject the product or service. Now, for people, sorry, I hope you're still here. They're not rejecting you personally. You've got to be able to distinguish a personal rejection from a professional rejection, right? When they reject your product or service, that's not personal. Personal rejection is when you come home in the evening and all your clothing is on the front lawn and the locks have been changed. That's personal rejection. When somebody says, I already have a product like that, I already have a vendor, it's too expensive, I don't need it, it's the wrong time of year, that is not personal. There's no reason to put you in the fetal position after that. So I encourage everybody to prepare for every call they're going to make. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? What's the realistic scenario? So if that's something you want to write down, what is the best case outcome of this call, this meeting, whatever we're having? What is the worst case? What is the reality case? If the worst case is I get off the phone and they're not moving forward, they're not interested, I'm not getting any money, there's nothing there, hopefully you learned a lesson. So my advice to you is when you get a rejection, identify where's that coming from. Learn a lesson, because that may help change how you present this next time. Okay, I then ask you, what's the best case scenario? And normally here people exaggerate. Oh, they write a check. Well, from an initial call that you were scared to make 30 minutes ago, you now make an initial call with somebody, the best case outcome is not they write a check. What is the best case outcome of you making that first phone call to that entity?
Want to learn more.
They want to learn more, right? So does everybody on this call have proper documentation, PDFs, websites, videos, etc., to send to their audiences? I don't know if you know this, but 60% of the world processes information visually, 25% auditorily, and 15% kinesthetic. So 60% now, very often when people say, can you send me something? You take that as a blow-off. Anybody relate to that? Somebody says, oh, interesting, send me something, and you think, oh, they're just blowing you off to be nice. Most people, myself included, are very visual. I want to read it. I'm not hearing you when you say it on the phone. And the numbers and the graphs and the charts, it doesn't do anything for me. I need to see something in writing. Now, years ago, I was hiring a marketing company for a client of mine. And I said, they need an executive summary. They need a 2-pager and they're willing to pay for it. And the guy was in Calabasas. He says, let me send you my overview. It's 27 pages. I said, you're a marketing agency. I'm asking you to do a 2-pager and you're telling me your overview is 27 pages? Please don't send it. Everybody's short on time, right? Nobody has time to read 27 pages as an overview. So I want to make sure that everybody on this phone has a 1 or 2 page max overview that puts your best foot forward. Doesn't have to answer every single question. It has to entice them enough to say, hey, I read your overview. Let's talk. Let's go further. All right, but getting back to the point on the screen, you can't lose what you don't have. Here is the very simple assessment I use. I have a name and a number. I'm feeling intimidation about calling them. I gather up the courage. I make the call. If it goes poorly, I lost a minute or two, and hopefully I learned a lesson. I lost nothing. They're not paying me. It's one thing if they're an existing client. So, Reese, if your clients from the past were still clients of yours, and now you call them and say, hey, we added a new product or service, and they say, not interested, just keep selling us the old stuff, it's a little bit different. You have a risk of losing a client. But if this is a brand new entity and they're not buying from you now, they're not paying you now, and you make your pitch and it's not as effective, or it may be effective, but they say no, what did you lose, Reese?
Exactly. And it is a new entity. And I can always get the initial meeting. Okay. I'm never worried about that because I know these people well.
So, folks, you've got to get comfortable with you can't lose what you don't have. And right now, with this perfectly good stranger that you don't even know, they're not paying you anything, so you can't lose anything. You only have upside. Okay, this next bullet point made my career and millions of dollars. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You'll learn about my history, and I'm going to show you some pictures about my career pivot shortly. But in 1992, I was pivoting, and I was offered an opportunity to go to Sydney, Australia for 2 weeks and train. And I thought the timing was wrong, and I thought the market was wrong, and I had all these reasons why it was not going to work out. And my coach mentor at the time, who was the CEO of a $300 million company, said, Leonard, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you don't get that plane ticket and go over there, you will never know what you could have had. And now we call it FOMO, fear of missing out. Back then, we didn't have that acronym. I said, you're 100% right. And I bought a ticket from New York to Sydney, Australia. And that 2-week visit turned into 6 months living there and 13 subsequent trips back to Australia. It turned out to be the turning point of my career. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So sorry, and the other ones on the call, if there are people that you're afraid of calling, I'd rather help coach you to get less afraid and make the call. And by the way, just because you're a little bit nervous and stumbling and fumbling does not mean it's a bad call. People like that. It's genuine. I would rather be pitched by somebody who's nervous and stumbling and fumbling than somebody who's so slick and it's so cool and it's so rehearsed, but it's not real. People prefer real. This quote was given to me as a paperweight when I moved to LA 31 years ago. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And I've shown this to hundreds of thousands of people. What would you attempt to do if you knew you couldn't fail? Would you make that other call? Would you make that presentation? Would you send the email? Because to me, failure is only a permanent thing. As soon as you take the effort, you're not failing anymore. You're still working. Okay. I have good news for you. These stats have improved over the years. Okay. 18% of small businesses these days fail in the first 5 years, in the first 1 year, 50% in 5 years, about 65% in the 10th year. Why am I saying good news? Because it used to be 90% failed in the first 5 years. So it's getting better out there. But if we look at why do small businesses fail, here are the top 5 reasons. The first one is lack of knowledge. A lot of people get into something. A friend of mine is leaving the entertainment business, writer-director, for the food service business. I said, what the hell do you know about food service? You know nothing. So she's now undergoing a 1-year immersion program to learn about food service because people underestimate what does it take. So if you read the paragraph on the left about knowledge, we're too rushed, we're too much in a hurry, we don't want to waste time learning, and we simply don't get the right results because we're not prepared. And 2 through 5, lack of support, bad business planning, lack of finances, poor marketing. You could see the reasons why companies are failing. And obviously working in the Preccelerator with Len and the mentors, it's all designed to help reduce that. Okay, so let's get back to working in your business or on your business.
Leonard, there's a question in chat. Let me just get it out there. How do you know when it's time to move on because it's been plenty of failures and not enough wins? When do you make that call?
That's a great question, but not a one-size-fits-all one. I would have to ask if I was doing this totally like this, not talking one-on-one to somebody, I would ask about how much time has gone by. I would ask to look at results. I would look to ask what's gone wrong. Is it fixable? Are we out of money? Have we lost confidence? I would also ask, have they consulted with their advisors? Have they talked to their attorneys, accountants, sales, marketing, coaches, etc.? I don't know that it's normally wise for somebody to make the decision to close the doors alone. Do you guys know the term mastermind alliance?
Yep.
Mastermind alliance came to my world about 30 years ago as kind of the unofficial board of directors for a small business. You know, large corporations have a board of directors, and they normally discuss and vote on big decisions. Sole practitioners, small business startups, who do they have? Their spouse, their kids, their parents? You need to have a mastermind alliance of professionals around you that can advise and guide you. Because, Len, maybe that person who's thinking about closing it down just needs to pivot. Maybe there's something that they've learned over the last 2 or 3 years that they could say, you know what, we were going to do retail, but we really should do manufacturing or something else. But we've already attained knowledge and experience and relationships. Why lose all that? So I hope that will suffice for the moment.
Thank you.
Leonard, another question for you.
Yes.
Is a lot of what you're talking about also, a lot of us have heard that. I remember the angels, and we talk this all the time. That is customer discovery, because it sounds very similar type of thing where you're discovering what it is that they like or don't like, and potential pivot points. It sounds very similar.
Well, do you see in the third line down, it says daily consistent sales, marketing actions, focus groups? Absolutely. Len, how many people develop their products in a vacuum without asking the market? Would you buy this? Oh, you're on mute.
Too many.
Folks, you got to know what the audience wants. It's great to have a good idea, but you've got to get a focus group. Who's your audience? What would they pay for it? Why would they buy it? Why would they buy it from you as opposed to what they're already buying? Folks, I've spent probably 20 years doing sales training in the deregulated energy industry. So talk about a commodity. Whether you buy, utilities are deregulated in 14 states in America. So you can get your electricity from the utility or from a third party. When you plug the device in the electric outlet, it's the exact same product. You're just paying somebody else. But it's the same, it's the ultimate commodity. And I help decommoditize commodities. Because do you know what's important to people paying a lot of money for their energy? Not saving another penny per megawatt. Are the bills understandable? How much time is this taking me in accounting? We got our client a very large account because they did consolidated billing for 700 locations. And it turns out that this company, the buyer, spends about $100 per month on every invoice. So they saved them over $500,000 a month on accounting by consolidating from 700 invoices to one invoice. So you never know what the benefit is for the audience unless you ask them. So getting back to this top line, working in your business is growth. If you're looking for growth, and I'm going to start at the top, pre-launch daily exposure visibility. Now, some of you are going to say, I'm not ready. And I say, I don't buy that. Just because you're in pre-launch does not mean you should not be testing the audience in the marketplace. And whether you're wearing a fedora and sunglasses and a raincoat and going into the competitor and walking through the stores to see what's on their shelves and what it's selling for, etc., or you're doing your own focus groups, you've got to be gaining knowledge and you've got to be exposing yourself and your products and services. And today with social media, you could do all your research for your bathrobe. Capital raising is a growth strategy. You've got to be doing that until you've got sufficient capital in the door. Daily consistent sales, marketing, and focus groups. Daily knowledge and skill development. The client that Len referred to is a new energy client of mine. The old energy was oil gas. The new one is converting waste into hydrogen. When I got hired by this company 10 months ago, he knew I was a complete ignoramus about his product. I'm not chemical. I'm not scientific. I'm not biology. I knew nothing about his world. And he said, well, I'll have to teach you. I said, I'm happy to learn what's relevant. And now I can make these presentations on my own without him, but I knew nothing. And I made a commitment every day. I signed up for a couple of newsletters and blogs. And within a few months, I started knowing the lingo. And by the way, when I get on the phone with people, I say, look, I got to tell you, I'm not scientific. I'm not technical. I'm business development. So I'm going to probably frustrate you when you ask very technical questions. But the good news is the team is behind me and we'll get them answered for you if they're important. So the way I handle not knowing something is to be very honest. Folks, write this down. I do not believe in fake it till you make it. I don't think people appreciate fake it till you make it. I rather use third-party credibility. And third-party credibility is, Stan, that's a great question. I don't have the answer. Let me ask you a little bit more about where it's coming from and blah, blah, blah. I will get you the answer and get back to you tomorrow. Does that work for you, Stan? People rather know that you're real than BSing them. Okay. Growth is managing and coaching staff and contractors and attending networking and community events. Are you guys back to attending events at least once a week? Are you in the habit of walking into a room of 15, 20, 30, 40 people who are strangers and networking and bringing business cards and following up? Now, by the way, in my other presentation, I use the word networking and I underline the letters WORK. Networking revolves work. Networking is not going for the free beer and hot dogs. Networking is going home that night and the next day putting all the names into your database and started sending them emails. Hey, nice meeting you last night, blah, blah, blah. What do we think? And staying in touch with people. Working on your business is more strategic. Okay, so the things you see on the right-hand column, strategic partnerships, new product and service, it's all important. Taxes, banking, exit strategies. These are all important, but they don't replace growth. And if you have no growth, you don't need the strategic. So it's really my goal and my job to get you comfortable doing the growth things that have the rejection possibility, but now you know the rejection is irrelevant because you can't lose what you don't have. Okay. I know this is going to be the diversified answer on this call. Are you raising capital or bootstrapping? Now, over my career, I've done both. As Len told you, I'm now helping clients raise capital for themselves because their industries just didn't make sense bootstrapping. And I'm happy to work with clients on either level if they're raising capital or they're bootstrapping and they're really on a very tight budget. About 10 years ago, I saw Seth Godin. Do you guys know Seth Godin? If you don't know Seth Godin, it's a good name to Google. He's a marketing genius, and he wrote the Bootstrappers Bible. And this is the Bootstrappers Manifesto. It's 2 pages long, this page and the next page. And normally I would have left it for the end of our call today, but I thought it was important to be here now. So I'm going to ask Len to find somebody with a lovely voice better than mine who can read this for us.
Reese, you ready?
Oh, wait, I can't put on my accent, right?
No accent.
I do a really good, bad, fake New York accent. Anyway, the Bootstrappers Manifesto. I am a bootstrapper. I have initiative and insight and guts, but not much money. I will succeed because my efforts and my focus will defeat bigger and better funded competitors. I am fearless. I keep my focus on growing the business, not on politics, career advancement, or other wasteful distractions. I will leverage my skills to become the key to every department of my company, yet realize that hiring experts can be the secret to my success. I will be fervent and intelligent user of technology to conserve my 2 most precious assets, time and money. My secret weapon is knowing how to cut through bureaucracy. My size makes me faster and more nimble than any other company could ever be. I am a laser beam. Opportunities will try to cloud my focus, but I will never waver from my stated goal and plan until I change it. And I know that plans were made to be changed. I'm in it for the long haul. Building a business that will last separates me from the opportunist, and it is an investment in my brand and my future. Surviving is succeeding, and each day that goes by makes it easier still for me to reach my goals.
Great.
Oh, Lord.
Page 2. You're doing good.
Keep going. I'm old. I'm tired.
Len, you have something else?
I can do it. Emily can do it.
Please.
Okay, let's go, Emily.
Go,
I
Emily.
pledge to know more about my field than anyone else. I will read and learn and teach. My greatest asset is the value I can add to my clients through my efforts. I realize that treating people well on the way up will make it nicer for me on the way back down. I will be scrupulously honest and overt in my dealings, and won't use my position as a fearless bootstrapper to gain unfair advantage. My reputation will follow me wherever I go, and I will invest in it daily and protect it fiercely. I am the underdog. I realize that others are rooting for me to succeed, and I will gratefully accept their help when offered. I also understand the power of favors and will offer them and grant them whenever I can. I have less to lose than most, a fact I can turn into a significant competitive advantage. I'm a salesperson. Sooner or later, my income will depend on sales, and those sales can be made only by me, not by an emissary, not by a rep. I will sell by helping others get what they want, by identifying needs and filling them. I am a gorilla. I will be persistent, consistent, and willing to invest in the marketing of myself and my business. I will measure what I do and won't lie about it to myself or my spouse. I will set strict financial goals and honestly evaluate my performance. I'll set limits on time and money and won't exceed either. Most of all, I remember that the journey is the reward. I will learn and grow and enjoy every single day.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I hope you guys appreciate this and found value out of this. We could do a whole session on just this manifesto, breaking it down. But now I want to ask you, are you more process or result oriented? As a business startup owner, are you more focused on the result, getting to $100 million or whatever that thing is, or the acquisition or the IPO? How many of you, and Len, can we do a raise the hand thing, or does that take too much time to ask how many people are more process oriented, how many are more result oriented?
Take me a couple seconds to set it up, but I will do so.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to show you on the left, I just added the x-axis and the y-axis for results and time. And the way I look at it is there's a stair-step process. And yes, at the top of the staircase is the money. So when I ask people, are you process-oriented or result-oriented? There are people I ask that say totally result-oriented. I got my eye on the prize, and that's what I'm working on. That's it. But they hate the process. And then I have people that love the process, love the mundane, love the daily, but they're not focused on the result. Oh, it'll happen. It'll come. Don't worry. I don't have to worry about that. Now, are we doing a survey or poll, or should we just move forward?
I'm working on it. I'm almost done.
Can you be both?
Ah, who said that?
Me, the pain in the butt.
Which pain in the butt? Reese?
The more you put in, the more you get out, right?
Okay. The answer is ideally you've got to be both.
All right. The poll is launched.
Okay.
Can everybody see it?
And he just gave us the answer.
Yeah, I gave you the answer, but I'm submitting mine anyway.
Me too. And I was like this. If you couldn't see, I was like both.
And by the way, if you want to cheat on this, that's fine. There's no real cheating. The point is, up until this moment, you may never have thought about this, but now when I pose this question to you, are you process or result oriented? You probably gravitated towards one answer or the other. Yep. Very few of you would have said both. But I submit to you, it's very hard to grow a business from conception, from an idea to reality, to the business plan, to the funding, to the launching of it, to the growth of it, to the acquisition or the exit of it, without being focused constantly, simultaneously on the process or the result.
So I think I have the best results we're going to get. 17% process, 21% result, and 63% both.
Okay, don't know if that would have been the case if we didn't say the answer beforehand, but I'm glad for the 63%. And look, those of you that are more result-oriented and hate the process, I will tell you, I don't like doing bookkeeping and administrative and invoicing and things like that. But I know that I do it better and cheaper than if I was going to delegate it to somebody. So I try to make my surroundings as best as possible. I don't do it during prime time when I'm worried, when I should be on the phone coaching and consulting and selling. I do it later at night. I put on some background music, either have a cup of tea or a glass of wine, something to make my environment very conducive for me to be doing this quiet type of work. You've got to find what makes you enjoy the process, because you're not going to circumvent the process, folks. You will never get to the result without the process. So it's my job to help you identify what can we do to help you enjoy the process more and more, because that makes the result more likely. Oops. Okay.
Hey, Leonard, I got a question for you.
Yes.
That stairway, that was one in China, is it not?
Say that again.
The stairway in your prior slide, that was in China.
I don't know. That was Google search.
Oh yeah,
But it's a staircase, and a lot of people think about the staircase, and oh my God, I'm just starting out. I'm at the base. Have you guys ever read the Santa Monica Steps? That could be burdensome.
Yes.
Yes.
Have any of you, very obscure question, have any of you been to the Three Sisters in Australia?
You have it right now, though, so I can come over tonight.
Three
How late
Sisters.
tonight? How late will somebody?
Oops. There's a mountain peak in Australia, in New South Wales, called the Three Sisters. It's three mountain peaks. And you're hiking and hiking and climbing and schlepping and steps and this and that. And you get to this plateau, and it says you reach the halfway mark. And I remember saying, oh my God, this is only halfway? I'm going to plots. 10 steps later, you're back at the parking lot. It was Australian humor. They wanted to fool you and say, oh, you're only at the halfway mark. You're already 95% there. But when I thought about being literally at the halfway mark, I don't know that I could do much more of this, And then you focus on the process, step by step by step. And the result is I can't wait to get back to the car and sit down and have a glass of water or something. So you've got to focus on what's important to you in the process and the results simultaneously all day long. Now, I was very fortunate being born into a family where my father owned a business. He and his brother started a business right after World War II that I'm going to show you about in a minute. So I'm going to ask you some questions that I realize a lot of people don't know the answers to. What does business ownership mean to you? Alejandra, what does business ownership mean to you?
Freedom.
Yeah, to me personally, just, taking care of your employees and, the community you serve.
Now, Alejandra's voice changed very drastically there.
You gotta emphasize the end of the name so we know who you're speaking to.
Oh, is that Alejandro answering?
Yeah.
Okay, so Alejandra said freedom. Alejandro said taking care of employees. That's what business ownership means to you?
Part of it.
Okay. Does anybody know how to finish the sentence? The buck stops
here.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself. For me, business ownership, yes, it means freedom. Absolutely, it means freedom. But it also means 100% responsibility, 100% authority, and 100% blame. I have all the upside if it goes well. I have all the downside if it goes poorly. Folks, you got to own that. And there are lots of schools of thought with business ownership. Len, I don't know if this is part of the Preccelerator workshop or program, but when does the business owner get paid? First or at the end if there's still some money left?
At the end.
Yeah.
So, there's a methodology. I think it's called zero-based financing, if I'm not mistaken. It's a term. And I think zero-based financing says the business owner, the founder, gets paid first. And do you guys all watch Shark Tank? Are all of you watching Shark Tank every single episode?
Seriously? If you knew how it worked behind the scenes, you'd never watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works behind the scenes, but I will tell you this. My daughters are 23 and 21. When Shark Tank first started, they were like 5 and 7, something like that. And they would say, Daddy, what does equity mean? Oh, the percentage of the company they own. Well, what does that mean? And before you know it, we're talking about pizza pies and a slice and 25% and blah, 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 blah. I started getting into Shark Tank when it started because I was intrigued by it, but I have found it to be the best is the wrong word, a very valuable tool for entrepreneur startups, for valuation, for ideas, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm sorry, I don't know behind the scenes, et cetera. I don't know what's going on there. But business ownership is very interesting because sometimes the sharks will say, you're not taking money, how are you going to live? If you can't support yourself and pay your rent and eat food, how are you going to pay for the company to grow? And other sharks will say, well, no, you get paid last. What do you mean you're getting paid first? So there is this big conversation about business ownership. When do you get paid? If there's money left or you take it first? Well, think about it. If you can't survive and you can't pay your rent and your bills, how's the business going to survive? Have you ever owned and built and run a company? So, Reese, you're the one saying you've done this 4 times and this is the 5th?
This is the fourth I've done more than three, but three were successful.
Got it. Okay. So you've had experience, but you realize every single one is different.
Oh yeah.
And one thing I never like clients saying to me is, well, in the past, in the other company, and this, because, okay, it may be referenced, but it doesn't mean a guarantee of what happened in the past is going to equal the future, right? So I have a belief. The future does not equal the past unless I allow it to. Just because you did something once and it didn't succeed does not mean it's not going to not succeed at the same time. Or vice versa. Just because you did something and it didn't work doesn't mean it's not going to work the next time. What skills, knowledge base do you need to improve on to be more effective in running a company? Folks, you've got to ask this. You've got to build your knowledge so that you are the subject matter expert. Next, what can you outsource or delegate, and do you need a partner? Now, I will tell you that Mission Profitable, I own myself for 30 years. That it's my own company. I don't have partners. But I was a partner in a video publishing company before YouTube and Vimeo. I know people don't even know there was a time before YouTube and Vimeo, but I was a partner in that company. And I was the sales partner. My partner was a technology partner. I know when I need a partner. I know when I'm out of my league and I cannot do this alone. And I'm suggesting this concept for you for both knowledge and expertise, but also for capital. Maybe one of the approaches for you guys to raise capital is to sell a piece of the company to a potential partner who's going to be a working partner, not just an investor. Who are your advisors, role models, mentors, and coaches? When Lenny asked the question before about when do you know it's time to close down the business, I said, you got to ask your advisors and role models. I hope you have a team in place that can be following your progress along the way so that when you do hit a stumbling block, they are there to help guide you and pick you up and get you moving in the right direction.
Len,
yes.
There's a question from one of our attendees. What is the best way to find a mentor?
I don't think there is one way to find a mentor. I think putting yourself out there. So joining the Preccelerator, certainly good. I will tell you this, though. Over the last 30 years, I have read hundreds of books on business development. I'm going to show you that in a minute. I have episodically reached out to the publisher and asked to speak with the author. Have any of you ever cold called the author of a book that you've read? They're flattered. They're happy to help. They're happy to say, oh, somebody read the book and loved it or has questions or whatever. You could also ask advisors for mentors. So maybe ask your attorney or accountant, who would be a good mentor for me? It's funny because I told you I was a partner in a video publishing company. This was the dot-com boom. It was 2003, 4, something like that. My mentor was a guy named Dan. He was 21 years old. He wasn't even shaving yet, but he was the video guru. If you remember when the internet was just brand new and it was still dial-up and nobody knew anything, I knew, and I don't come from a technical background. So I found this guy in Connecticut. He was the video guru. He was half my age. I saw him from online things that he wrote and he posted. And I said, Dan, I'd love to engage you as my coach, as my mentor to get into this. And the first thing he did is he said, I know a company that needs a sales guy. They have technology. They don't have sales. You have sales. You don't have technology. And he introduced me. This guy, Dan, introduced me to the guy who became my partner and best friend for many, many years. So how you find a mentor is from a million different directions. But first, you got to be really genuine with yourself. What do you need? What are you looking for a mentor? They're not a boss. They're not a boss.
Thank you, Reese, for putting in chat that resource. For people who are looking for mentors, that's a great resource. Thank you.
So I want to share with you real quickly my personal journey and pivot. My father and three uncles started a company called Atlas Floral Decorators in 1945 when they came home from the war. And the first weekend, they established their sales office at a little place off Central Park called the Plaza Hotel. So they were the Plaza Hotel for us for nearly 70 years. And then they picked up the Pierre, and you could see all the places on the left. That business sadly closed a month before COVID, coincidentally. Everybody in the family business died off, and my cousin decided to sell it. That was me. I was 18 on a ladder. I was totally blue collar. I was inheriting my family business. I was working in this business. This was 100-degree weather, doing an outdoor canopy. You could see bandana was my trademark, tools on my waist. And a few years later, after my father died, we had a fight in the family, and I left the family business and I started my own, Leonard Atlas Floral Productions. And I said, I'm not going to do weddings and bar mitzvahs, private parties, because it's all weekends and you have no quality of life. I'm going to do all corporate. So I networked. I did what I knew I could do back then. And my biggest account was Madison Square Garden, owned by Mendick Realty at the time. And you could see Madison Square Garden on the outside, 38 birch trees that we had to light up. Now, if anybody knows anything about New York City in November, where we can only work from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., it's cold, it's windy, it's rainy. You're in bucket trucks on ladders. If you wear gloves, you can't feel the lights. If you don't wear gloves, you cut your fingers. So we did 38 trees in 2 nights. Then we did the big 25-foot tree. The picture on the right is me on a chair, on a cherry picker. You can see with the bandana again. And I was hanging, I was the first person to ever do oversized Christmas ornaments. So if you've ever seen the big 3 or 4 foot Christmas ornaments, that was my invention 30 years ago. And as I was hanging the 18th one, the last one, I electrocuted myself. And my staff brought me down to the ground. I was 40 feet in the air, and they put me on the ground, and I was shivering. And I wasn't sure if I was alive or dead. And I said to myself, that's it. I'm leaving this decorating industry. It's gotten too dangerous. And my first thought, I was still on the ground, tremoring, saying, I think I'm going to go to law school. Now, guys, do you all know the term defining moment? We've all had defining moments in our lives. These are not things you plan for. These are things that can just happen circumstantially that change the course of our lives. So at this moment, I'm lying on the ground thinking, I got to get the job finished. I got to get the hell out of here, but I also have to get out of this business. Floral decorating will kill me. And while I was recovering for the next day, a friend of mine who was attending college at Cornell asked me if I ever heard of Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. And at that time, I never had. Specifically, it says concentrate on the vital few, ignore, delegate, or delay the trivial many. And what Len told you about going for the no is a derivative of Pareto's principle. Let me explain to you, because it really is very important. I mean, it's been the biggest defining moment of my career. In the late 1800s, Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian economist. And he found that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the landowners, 80-20. And then he found that 80% of the crops were grown on 20% of the farms, 80-20. And now fast forward, and I took it from being an economic principle into sales. I have found that 80% of a company's sales comes from 20% of its customers, its prospects. I have found that 80% of a company's sales comes from 20% of its sales team. My big energy client, the CEO, would always say to me, you know, Len, we could fire half the staff, half the sales guys, and we would hardly lose any revenue. The bottom half do so little compared to the top half. This is a major, major differentiator. If you knew, folks, so let's say you're looking for funding right now. If you knew that 80% of the people you're going to present were not going to say yes, we'll write a check for you, would you present to them differently? Here's the difference. And this is all sales training, so I'm really trying not to spend too much time on that today. Most people are selling for the yes. Can you see how good we are? Can you see this? Can you see that? Can you see that? What happens when salespeople sell to you with the yes? Emily, when people say, can you see how we're the best insurance and this is the best policy and you'd be great with this and you'd love it? When you get that, how do you react? What do you say or do?
I'm hesitant and ask them to give me their information, and I'm going to do my own research.
And was that all a polite way of saying, no, thanks, I'm not interested?
Yeah.
Okay, folks, ladies and gentlemen, here's the reality. When we, as salespeople, as entrepreneurs, go for the yes, we pressure both ourselves and our prospects. And when people feel pressure, they lie and hide. So when you all of a sudden have all these people in black holes and they're not responding to calls and they're ghosting you and all this kind of stuff, you got to ask yourself honestly, did I pressure them in such a way where I didn't give them a chance to say no? When you practice Pareto's principle in 80-20 professional sales, I'm always saying, Stan, if this doesn't make sense, would you just let me know? And if there's no fit, we close the file. That's fine. If it doesn't work for this project, that's okay. We'll talk about the next one. You okay with that? When you tell people up front, it's okay to say no to me. It's okay to not be interested in this. They tend to be more honest. So now what I'm about to say sounds like a joke, but it's 100% truthful. For 20 years, my clients would say, you should do a thing on this for dating. This thing sounds great for dating. And I used to say, yeah, but my wife won't let me do the research. 10 years ago, we ended a 27-year marriage and I started doing the research. And I have found that Pareto's principle 80-20 works in dating as well. More people that you meet online, let's say, you're never going to fall in love with and have a lifelong relationship with. So if you can find those things early on, and by the way, we do this through a criteria analysis, and I'm not trying to make dating less romantic. Let's go back to the business world. But do you guys all have a criteria of what you're looking for in a funding source, in a mentor, in a vendor, in a manufacturer? You've got to know what you're looking for intellectually before you go out there and find it. Okay, so I'm a few days away from being electrocuted. My friend tells me about Pareto's principle. I realize I'm not going to go to law school in my part-time. I didn't have part-time. So I started going to Barnes & Noble. I know most of you don't know what Barnes & Noble is. It used to be a big bookstore chain all over the world. And I started buying books on personal development and growth. Now, there have been many, many others, but I've highlighted these few because these have been the most major for me. Napoleon Hill. He wrote Think and Grow Rich in 1939. It was the first business development book ever, personal growth and development book. And from that book, I got the term success consciousness or failure consciousness. And I thought, oh my God, people actually have a failure consciousness? You know, the people with fear of success or fear of failure issues? There are people who need to prove to themselves that they're not good enough, like their parents told them, and they'll just constantly fail. So this whole thing about failure consciousness or success consciousness became something that I needed to incorporate into my daily thinking. Tony Robbins, I've read, but I've also worked with him and his family on a number of occasions. And one of the best things I ever got out of Tony Robbins was you only need to be courageous for 20 seconds at a time. So when we talk about fear of rejection and the phone call, remember from a few slides ago, remember that tough question, that nervousness you have, it's going to last 20 seconds. When the other person answers the telephone, let's say, if they're an a-hole, they're not a nice person, they're angry, they're already mad at you, but the call didn't even start. Say, oh, maybe I caught you at a bad time. How about we try something later? But if they say, what do you want? Well, I want to talk to you about a business startup I'm going through. If that call doesn't warm up within 15 to 20 seconds, you don't belong there. So that was the Tony Robbins thing. Eckhart Tolle. I don't know how many of you read The Power of Now. That was a life-defining moment for me in reading that book. Realizing how many people are stuck in the past. Oh, when I used to be over there, when I was in that job, when I was in school, everything was better. You know, they romanticize the past because it's gone. And then there's other people who romanticize the future. When I get the promotion, when I get my funding, when we get married, when we move to the new house, they're not in the now. That book, and I'll tell you what I did because somebody detected a New York accent on me. I used to be a fast taxi driver type of driver. I had no patience for slow drivers. I would weave in and out and blah, blah, blah. I read this book, The Power of Now, and I gave myself an assignment. And I live in LA now where there's traffic. For 30 days, I was not changing lanes. I was staying in the right lane. And because I'm such of a time management mashugana, I would leave an extra 15 or 30 minutes in my calendar for commuting. If I knew it would take 15 minutes, I'd now allow it a half hour because I was not switching lanes. I needed to focus on being in the now. Now, I am the most impatient person online at Trader Joe's, at Whole Foods, at the bank, at the TSA. After I read Eckhart Tolle, and I said, oh my God, just because I'm busy online doesn't mean I can't be working in my brain. I am never, ever bored anymore. The Power of Now put me in the now as opposed to being in the past or the future. I really recommend that book, highly. In the middle column, Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. There's only one that I remember, and I use it every single day. Be impeccable with your words. And I want to encourage everybody listening to this call to be impeccable with your words. I never use the words problem, hope, or try. You know that a problem means there's no known solution. Everything we're talking about is not a problem. It's a challenge, an obstacle, a glitch, an issue, and it's something uncomfortable, unforeseen. Not a problem. There are solutions to all this stuff. And hope and try, what the hell do they mean? Right? When somebody says, I'll try to review the document. I hope to be on the webinar. What does that mean? You either put it in your calendar to be on the webinar at noon or you're not. There's no hope. Jim Collins. If you have not read his book, From Good to Great, you owe it to your business to read From Good to Great. He gives 10 steps for a company to go from good to great. And the first one is the one that I focus on. Get the wrong people off the bus and the right people on the bus. And I will tell you, there's not a day that goes by that I don't talk to somebody in a business saying, oh, we got to fire this person. We have a bad CFO. This guy, this one's terrible. That one's terrible. This one's terrible. What are you contending with terrible people for? What are you dealing with people ongoing that you know do not belong? And then Malcolm Gladwell wrote many books, but one of them was called Blink. And Blink talks about thin slicing. And thin slicing says when you have 10,000 hours of expertise in something, you can make very, very quick decisions accurately. So when people now pose me sales and marketing challenges and I come up with the answer, boom, off the top of my tongue, it's because I've been doing it for 30 years. There's very little I haven't heard of yet. So be patient with yourself as you're going through the learning curve and developing your 10,000 hours. Okay, so I got all this knowledge. I'm reading all these books. And I said, I've got to get out of special event decorating. It's perishable inventory, emotional clients, artistic staff, long hours, all day long, no leverage, physically dangerous. And I migrated into global entrepreneur sales and business consulting. Now, you see me in a pool. That was my home in Bel Air. One of the things I wanted to do is make my work environment very user-friendly. And I said, imagine coaching people while I'm in the pool. And that's what I did. For many, many years, most of my coaching calls were done from the pool or the jacuzzi, just because I had to so much get out of the old mentality of being in trucks with tools and ladders and scaffolds. So this was a transition that I made of myself. It took about 18 months, and it got me from Brooklyn to Bel Air. So all the learning that I took, and I started interviewing people and working with my clients, taught me 5 things. Mindset is absolutely key. Folks, if your mindset is not from abundance versus scarcity, if you're thinking scarcity, not abundance, you're going to lose. Now, by the way, like we talked about the castle before, your mindset is yours. You own it. You can't allow anybody to ruin it for you. Now, what does abundance and scarcity mean to any of you? Are any of you confused by what I mean by that? And does it apply to your business?
I don't think I understand it.
Okay. We had for a client for a few years, car part manufacturer that could only sell to the big 3. So we were training the buyers and the sellers, but they had a complete audience of 3 prospects. Could you imagine only having 3 people that you have to call on all the time? You can only sell to these 3 companies. That's it. What happens Monday at 10:15 when you made your 3 phone calls? That's scarcity, right? How many industries have too few people to talk to? Now, are any of you, and if it's too personal, you don't have to say yes, but are any of you dealing with situations where you're in a marketplace that it feels scarce? There's just not a lot of opportunity out there? Are any of you in the typewriter repair business? That would be scarcity, right? When I met my client a year ago in the waste to energy industry, I said, so how many of these systems can the world accommodate? He said, oh, about 100,000. We only need 5 to become $1 billion company. But there's 100,000 systems that can be built around the world to convert waste into hydrogen. Help me get to 5 and we'll be a multi-billion-dollar company. That's abundance. Next is behavior. I focus my clients on consistency, not intensity. The worst thing I could do is get you all excited on this call today and say, I'm going to make 100 calls tomorrow because you're going to burn out. I would rather people not make 100 calls one day, but make 20 calls every day. Consistency is the key, not intensity. Number 3 is technique, and that comes from 80-20. Disqualifying, so going for the no, and probing. Before you start pitching, let me tell you all about my product. Find out about them. What are you looking for? Hey, when we scheduled today's appointment and you invited me in, what were you hoping we were going to discuss? What do you guys have a need for? Number 4 is rewards, and we're going to talk about smart goal setting in a couple of minutes. And number 5 is patience. We live in such an instant gratification society that if a web page doesn't open in 2 seconds, we're gone. You've got to have patience if you're going to grow a business and think about the short, the medium, and the long term. Okay, So as a result of coming up with Brooklyn to Bel Air, these are many of the clients I've worked with. A lot of them focused in commercial real estate because the ROI is ridiculous. When I work with commercial real estate people and I help a group of people sell, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars for $100,000 expense. So the ROI is off the charts for them. And then I went white collar, no more blue collar, no more tools, no more ladders, all white collar. And what that helped me do is write my second book, What's Holding Your Sales Back? Find it, face it, and fix it. Now, I want to share with you guys the 3 things we learned. Peter Farkas is a real estate attorney. He and I co-authored the book together. And before we wrote the book, we interviewed thousands of our salespeople that we work with and thousands that we have not worked with. And we wanted to find out what was holding their sales back. And here are the 3 top answers we found. Most, not talking to enough people. Second, admittedly not talking to the right people. And third, not sure what to say or do. And these are the things that we help in a sales development aspect. Identify what should be the right number, who is the right audience, and what do you say or do? Okay. You guys all know the term social capital? Is your social capital an asset or a liability for you right now growing this business? If you're not using your social capital, you're probably making a lot of cold calls. So Len told you, I reached out to him because we're connected on LinkedIn. And I was going through funding sources. I remember Len from Lava, the LA Venture Group. And I said, I need a referral. And I'm not going to go cold. Why would I call strangers who don't know me if I can call a guy who knows me and remembers me and thinks good of me and say, hey, I need a favor. So you've got to think about, are you just going cold because that's working much harder than ever versus working warm in referrals? I know this is an old-fashioned word, but do you have a Rolodex? That's now your social capital. How many business cards? I don't know your ages, but how many of you graduated college within the last 10 years and are not using your alumni directory as resources? If you've graduated in 10 years and say, hey, we both graduated from whatever school together, blah, 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 thought it'd be fun to reach out to a fellow alum and see if we could help work together in this project I'm on. Now, LinkedIn, you know, there was a saying, LinkedIn is the new cold call. You remember, it used to be the world is 6 degrees of separation. It's now 4.3 degrees because of LinkedIn. I'm a very, very, very big advocate of using LinkedIn daily. Are you spending time daily expanding your network? My youngest daughter graduated college last year, and she's an expert in theatrical makeup. What this young woman could do to people on a movie set is crazy. The blood, the gore, the knife, the thing. She's just amazing. And she's now working on this amazing film. And I said, so how are you going to get the next film? She said, well, people will talk about me. I said, honey, how about being a little proactive? So I went into my LinkedIn account and I said, Danny, who hires you? She said, the director. I've never been in the entertainment business. I typed in directors, first 3 levels, 4,200. And my daughter's 21. So I said, Danny, this girl's 26. This one's 28. These are all young women who are doing what you're doing. You can connect with them. Well, what would I say? Of course, our first thing is, what would she say? I said, how about the truth? Somebody you know and my dad are connected and they thought I should get in touch with you. Here's a link to my profile, to my website. Done. So my daughter now has a database of 4,200 directors, all young women in LA to be approaching. You got to be on LinkedIn constantly. Are you posting articles to make yourself a subject matter expert? Are you replying to other people's articles and getting into the conversation? And of course, Preccelerator. Are you networking with everybody in Preccelerator? Are you networking with all the other candidates for startup and all the mentors? I mean, these are obvious things, but you got to value your social capital. I just saw this the other day. 100% of employees are people, 100% of customers are people, 100% of investors are people. If you don't understand people, you don't understand business. So I want to make sure that you're real comfortable talking to people, approaching people in a comfortable, non-confrontational way. Okay, let's do a little bit on time management. Are any of you crazy with time and you're not getting everything done? Because I deal with a lot of time management issues. And people say there's not enough time in the day. Well, that's not a choice. We only all get 24 hours a day. And I will say to you, I don't believe that time management is a clock issue. I believe it's an emotional issue. because of the following. We avoid and delay doing activities that we don't like or fear. The people that tell me they have time management issues, I ask them a question out of left field. How much time you watch TV a day? And there's normally 2 or 3 hours. And they go to the gym and they're doing this. And I'm not saying anything about any of those things being wrong, but if you have time for that, don't you have time for the things that you need to do for your business? So let's talk about this. 50% of people working in offices are productive, or they're productive 50% of the time, I should say. So if you were to look at your activities during the day, how much are you really being productive and how much are you just BSing? The key to business productivity is consistency, not intensity. We talked about that earlier. This is going to be mind-blowing for you. Work on goal time, not clock time. I've had a lot of people say to me, well, I'm going to make calls for an hour a day. And I say, please don't do that. Because in an hour, you could have 2 conversations because one of them went for 40 minutes. But if you know that you're supposed to make 10 calls a day, even though you had a good call for 40 minutes, you didn't reach your goal. So instead of thinking clock time, and by the way, you know what happens with clock time? Let's say you're going to make calls from 10 to 11. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Well, let me get a cup of coffee. So you pour your coffee, and you see there happen to be muffins in the room. So you take a muffin, and now you go back to your desk, and you got your coffee and your muffin, and you think, well, I can't call right now. I'm chewing. So I'll go check my email, and I'll check messages, and I'll talk to my family, and what are we doing for July 4th, and what's going on? Oh, I got to pee. And now you run to the bathroom, and before you know it, it's 10:35. And you're on clock time, but half your time is now wasted with coffee and everything else. Whereas goal time doesn't lie. If you're making 10 calls or 10 emails, you're doing 10. So now there are some people that need belt and suspenders. Be on goal time with clock time if you're really that out of control with time. But you got to certainly be on goal time more than clock time. Okay, I love this next one. It's going to be eye-opening for you. Time can only be divided into 2 categories, pay time and no pay time. I'm going to help you get out of the rut right now. What constitutes pay time? Prospecting and presenting. If you're not prospecting on the phone or by email or LinkedIn or in front of somebody presenting, you're not doing pay time. Now, why do I focus on this? Because pay time activities normally are limited to when people are awake and it's socially appropriate to call them. What are your pay hours? What are the hours a day when you have the highest likelihood of reaching the audience that you need to reach? If you come from the perspective of, I'm calling investors, I'm calling scientists, I'm calling research, or whatever you're calling, what is the best time to reach them? Now, I don't know if it was circumstantial or not, but I wound up having a very global business. And during COVID, this really benefited me a lot. I was doing business in Europe, doing business in Asia. And now my energy business, we're doing projects all over the world. So I have pay time 24 hours a day. Literally, if I woke up at 3 a.m., I could say, oh, I'm going to call Europe. And if I was up, I can call Europe or Asia and work and be productive 24 hours a day. Now, that's my craziness. What is your pay time, though? You've got to establish, when are you doing these specific prospecting and presenting activities? Everything else, remember I told you to do my invoicing late at night? Because that's not pay time typically for me. So I don't want to ruin pay time, prime time, with non-prime time activities. Now, there are 3 ways to reduce procrastination. The first way, I do daily, it's a personal reward system. I want to share with you. I was working with a group of HVAC executives, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. So these are sales engineers. And I said, do you have a system in place for when you screw up? And a guy raises his hand and say, yeah, I drink alcohol. Okay, so you get drunk when you screw up. I said, now, do you have a system in place to reward yourself when you do really well? Same guy raises his hand. I said, yeah, what do you do? He said, I drink alcohol. So in his case, the same stimulation is the carrot and the stick. I live at the beach now. And I have found about myself, I work best in 90-minute increments. I work for about 90 minutes, and then I go take a walk. I go I'm a block from the beach. I go to the beach. I do walking, yoga, meditation, whatever. I don't work well in long shifts any longer. I used to when I was younger. Now I like to take breaks every 90 minutes. So I take 3 or 4 major walks a day to get about 10,000 steps in. I have personal reward systems that when I get this behavior done, I'm going to do this activity for myself. Next, Ohio. Only handle it once. Great acronym. I have found so many people touch things so many times that they're wasting time. Just handle it once. And third and finally is reduce multitasking. Now, this one caught me off guard because I used to be the king of multitasking, thinking that's machismo. I have all these web tabs open. I don't know if you saw the study out of Harvard. Multitasking is unhealthy. Multitasking creates high blood pressure and stress. There are a lot of scientific reasons why multitasking is not good for your body. But also, and I didn't know this, it takes 6 to 8 minutes to refocus when you multitask. If you go from the PowerPoint presentation to the proposal to the this to that, every time you got to read back a little bit, go up a page or two, I was wasting an hour a day multitasking. So now I use Ohio. I open one document, I work on it as far as I can, as long as I can. I save it, I close it, I take a little break, and I come back and I do something brand new. How do you reduce minimize the effects of multitasking? The only time you can truly multitask is if one of the tasks is fully automated, like walking on a treadmill. It's okay to read a book when you're walking on the treadmill or folding laundry, but you should avoid bad multitasking. Bad multitasking is trying to complete 2 tasks that require your attention, such as reading emails while attending a Zoom meeting. You can't distract your attention both ways. So be present where you're at. That's the power of now thing. And do one thing really well. Okay. How many of you, I know this is a loaded question and I'm trying to be sensitive on time and leave time for questions. How many of you are chasing shiny objects? How many of you are just pivoting you see something new and you go to a trade show, oh my God, we should add this and we should add that and we should add that. One of my best and long-term mentors taught me the 12 ways to reduce chasing shiny objects. Focus, focus, focus. Focus, focus, focus. Focus, focus, focus. Focus, focus, focus. I cannot overstate the importance of you staying focused. If you're finding yourself distracted, this one, that one, then maybe it's time to take a day off and say, why am I so susceptible to this temptation? And by the way, this is true with dating also. Am I not with the right person? If I'm so looking at other things, then I may be with the wrong person. But going back to your business startup, why? Now, do you have a glaring hole in your business and you're missing something and you're chasing that thing to finish and round out your product offering? That's different. But once you say we're set, we got everything we need, stay focused on it. Okay, I guess we should spend a minute talking about workaholism. Are any of you workaholics? If not, we can go through this fast. Yeah, we have some workaholics. Okay. Do you have it and why? Stan, you want to tell us why you think you're a workaholic? Stan, you there? Come off mute, please.
There we go.
Why do you think you have a workaholic behavior?
Because I'm always at it, always on.
Okay. Do you know why?
I've thought about that quite a bit. I think one of the answers is fear of failure.
Okay. I'm not going to be personal because I don't know you at all. Is there a fear of inadequacy as well? Are you feeling like you're not doing enough? And maybe if I do more and I work harder and I work more hours, it'll get better and I'll close that other deal and blah, blah, blah.
Sometimes it's greed as well, saying, okay, things are going well and I want to get as much while I can while it's happening.
Okay. But you know that saying that nobody on their deathbed ever said, oh, I wish I spent more hours at the office.
Well, I agree.
Okay. I am all about working smarter, not harder. Everything I do with my clients for 30 years is teaching them to work smarter, not harder. Now, there are times you have to work smart and hard. I agree. But just working hard without smart doesn't make sense. You got to be able to prioritize and delegate. But I want to talk to you about this concept, balance and boundaries. I saw this chart 30 years ago, and it didn't mean a lot to me. And then I had my kids, and all of a sudden, you know when you have kids, that work-life balance thing comes in? And I was talking to a massage therapist I was seeing at the time, and I said, I need better work-life balance. And she said to me, balance is impossible to measure. Boundaries are easy to measure. And I took that concept with this, and I'll share with you. My younger daughter was a few months old, and I created a boundary. The boundary was from the time I came home from work, I was not working at home at that time. I had an office in Beverly Hills. From the time I came home from work until Zoe went to sleep, I would not work. I would not turn on my computer. I would not make a phone call. That was a boundary that was very easy to establish and to monitor. She goes to bed, I can go back to work for an hour or two. But as long as she's up for that hour or so in the evening before I'm not going to work. So there are many versions of this kind of chart, and people call this the 8 categories different things. What I would ask you to do, take a screenshot and rate each of your 8 categories with how satisfied you feel with where they are in your life. And you may come up with something that looks like something like this. Chances are, and Stan, you're going to say for work, you're going to give it a 5 because you're doing, but if you're putting all your effort into work, if you're working like a Meshuggah and you're a workaholic, probably you're spending less time on spiritual, on health, on friends, on family, on pleasure, right? Folks, when you plot this, 0 is in the middle, then 1, 2, 3, and 5 is in the outer ring. The more outer ring circles you have, the more balanced you are, but you're going to have some deficits. And I will tell you, I've never met anybody, when I started this exercise with them, they did not realize by doing this very visually, I'm not spending enough time with my family or my friends or working out or whatever. So this is a very good exercise. Because, by the way, Stan, you're not doing your business any benefit by not having the best well-rounded life you could have, right? The more well-rounded you are, the better you can perform in business. Okay. So what does lack of boundaries and balance mean for you, your sponsor, partner, your children? So I ask you to think about it, especially if you have young families. Are you neglecting them, not intentionally, to build the business, but you can't recapture those years? So think about it now while you still have the opportunity. Okay, last main topic. We created Atlas GPS, goals, plan, and support. So goals for us are an awareness and accepting of where you're at and you believe you can get to there. Do you believe that you're going to achieve these goals? Planning is making positive choices with consistent actions. And support, people have to give themselves permission to succeed. We've talked about the fear of failure, and you've got to have patience and external accountability. Now, I've been in LA for 31 years, so this is going to sound more LA than New York. But what I have found is that our work environment has to be multisensory. We have to engage all our senses. So when I'm not on the phone or on Zoom, I've got background music, usually Baroque Largo or soundscapes. Baroque Largo, for those of you that don't know, they did a test 20 years ago with plants in greenhouses. They had 3 greenhouses. One had no music, one had rock and roll, one had Baroque Largo. The plants with no music had the normal growth. The plants with rock actually died quickly, and the plants with Baroque Largo grew like Miracle-Gro. There are certain sounds of music that are meant to create concentration and productivity. Look up Baroque Largo. That's one of my favorites for focus. Tactile. Are you playing something in your hands? There was a young girl on Shark Tank a couple of months ago. She developed something that looked like sandpaper, but it's really for people that are just nervous and need to have something in their hands. So it was a stress device. Visual. A lot of people use fish tanks or screensavers, just have a visual distraction. Olfactory is very, very powerful. Very powerful. There are amazing essential oils for productivity, for focus, for attention, for clarity. Great things. I didn't know any of this as a New Yorker. And taste is also very important. I know if I sit down with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, I feel better. I can focus, I can work more because I feel like I got what I need. Getting out of your mind and into your body. 10 to 15-minute breaks 2 to 3 times a day, minimum. You can't just sit in your chair from 9 to 5 and be productive. Your body is aching. You're not comfortable. You got to move around. Stress release activities, hobbies, you got to have them. Walking, yoga, stretching, meditation, crafts, music, call a friend, make a snack. You can't just be work, work, work and be well-balanced and productive. Okay. Prioritizing your priorities. It's not the how, but the why. So what are your whys? You're embarking on an entrepreneurial venture right now. What are the top 3, 4, 5 reasons why you must succeed? And if you tell me paying off taxes, paying off debt, paying off student loans, that's not goals. Those are responsibilities you have. When we talk about goals, we're thinking what's important to you and your family, and it's SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. The difference between a dream and a goal is specific, it's time bound, and it's written down. You could take any dream and do those 3 things to it, and it becomes a goal. Now, it may not be realistic, but it becomes a goal. But once you write it down and you say, okay, I'm probably not going to be a king or a queen or a prince or an emperor in 5 years and own a castle. That's probably not realistic. But I wrote it down and I realized it's not. So what can I modify it to? So goals are meant to be modified. So what are your takeaways from today? What can you change now as a result of this call? What will you change now? Because what you can and what you will do are 2 different things. What do you already know that you're going to resist doing that we talked about? How about for the next 30 days? How about the next 90 days? What did today's call do for you to get you lifelong changes? Are there things we've talked about that could stimulate short-term, medium, and long-term changes for you? And what are our possible next steps together? Len and I talked about if there was enough interest in today, we can talk about putting together an in-house program for Preccelerator, do our 3-day sales program that Len attended, etc., if that's what's appropriate. And we can do things on Zoom and ongoing and one-on-one and all the rest of that. So that's it. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, it's just almost 1:30. I'm happy to take questions if there still are. And by the way, I'm happy to go a little later than 1:30 if you guys have time to stay.
Happy to stay as long as people want. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay. Questions, comments, things we can help discuss before we adjourn?
No, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Who wants to just give me what was the